Apologies, folks. Running a little phone sort of self off. I had to re putting all the links in the description there. So apologies. Let me just share this to a few folks real quick. What's up there, Jenny from Michigan? How are we doing? How's my connection looking? Do I got any mods in here yet? Connection's good, he said there. Oh. I've got a good variety of stuff here. Hey there, Cindy, safety man. Hi, Denise. There's civilian. Mr. Duggins, Rico. I don't have any fans on, man. It's cold outside. I don't know what you're talking about. So, let's see. Where's my notes? I need this one. All right. So, how is everyone? Thank you, mods. Go ahead and tell you how much I appreciate you guys now. Like I said, excuse my being late, everyone. My phone sort of just shut itself off, and I had to go through and copy and paste all the links that are in the description. So a couple minutes behind here, but I wanted to give you the resources to locate what I'm going to refer to here tonight. As always, this is not legal advice. This is simply for informational purposes, in no way, shape, or form. Should you just trust me, I would highly recommend that you self-educate so you know that the information that you have is correct. With that being said, let's get to tonight's show. Let's see. We got a bunch of different stuff here. I was running a little behind this week on preparing for the show, so I've got a sort of hodgepodge of things that we're going to go over just to keep it light. Okay, so the first link is an article from Indiana courts, and it refers to something that we have going on locally in Indiana, which is Senate Bill 12, which they recently have amended. I have the one of the older versions that has the interesting language that they got rid of. We're just going to touch on this really quick. This is a bias-motivated crimes bill. Senate Bill number 12 here in Indiana. The citations affected would be Indiana Code 10-13-3, Indiana Code 35-31.5-2-260.2, and Indiana Code 35-38-1-7.1. And basically, I'll read it here, makes it an aggravating circumstance for purposes of imposing a criminal sentence that a crime was committed with the intent to harm or intimidate an individual or a group of individuals because of certain perceived or actual characteristics of the individual or groups of individuals, requires law enforcement agencies to report bias-motivated crimes to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. If approved, this will go into effect July 1st, 2019. Now, there is a link for the Senate bill. You can look at the latest version. You can look at the various progress that it's made. Specifically, what we're going to touch on is Section 12 of Indiana Code 35-38-1-7.1. And this is basically the meat of it. The person committed the offense, including an offense involving an individual or a group of individuals' property, with the intent to harm or intimidate an individual or a group of individuals because of the individuals or group of individuals' perceived or actual blah, 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 blah. Now, the person committed the offense, including an offense involving an individual or a group of individuals' property. Okay, now you can commit an offense against an individual's property if that individual is perceived to have the status, which would be 12K, status as a public safety official. That's a police officer. So you could have an aggravating circumstance under a hate crime bill. What's up there, James? For destruction of the property of a police officer. What's up, Terry? Now, there's also Section J, political affiliation. L, status as a relative of a public safety official. So essentially, a cop's relative, relative is open to interpretation, it looks like, because there's no definition in here. The relative of a public safety official. So you could be charged, under this version of this bill that's been amended. You could have been charged with a hate crime for the offense against the property of the relative of a public safety official, of a cop. That's some scary language to have in the law. It's similar to what Louisiana had going on with their Blue Lives Matter protection, hate crime kind of deal. Now, if you look at the latest version of the bill, this, a lot of this, very, very scary language has been cut out. And they have race, religion, color, sex, gender identity, disability, national origin, ancestry, sexual orientation, and some other things still in it, like a hate bill should be, or like a bias-motivated crimes bill should be. But it's just it's very interesting to see that they attempted this. You know what I mean? They will definitely attempt to do it again. Timing wasn't right for this right now. But if you check the the latest version, you'll see that they've removed that language, and it's moving along in its process to maybe be purchased as a law. But what's up there, Huckleberry? Didn't see you in here yet. Anyway, yeah. So good thing there. What else were we going to get to? All right. So below that, there should be below this, I believe it's the third link down. Maybe. Yeah, actually. Hey, one of my mods there, Civilian X, can you jump in that description and post the third link down so I can see if I'm referring to the right one real quick? See if I can check, but fucking Wi-Fi's been acting up lately. I don't think it's going to let me check on this other phone here. Maybe I should update for a better, faster YouTube one day. Third down is the Cambridge. So is the fifth down the Black Lives Matter t-shirt? Yeah. I can't get to my YouTube on this one right now. Oh, apologies for anyone watching this later. I got Huckleberry says third one down is Cambridge. So fourth one should be Brewington. All right, so the fifth link down is should be an article from the Eugene, I believe it's Volokh conspiracy website. It's he is, I believe he's out of UCLA law, maybe. Yeah, I want to say he's out of UCLA. Anyway, individual in State v. Bartell, Andrew Bartell. It's out of the Kansas Court of Appeals. And it's basically this dude's charged with arson. He set a truck on fire that had I think it had a Confederate flag on the truck. And he was found to not have First Amendment protection for his Black Lives Matter t-shirt that he wore to court. Essentially, that's about all I have on that. I haven't had too much time to read into this case too much. I just found it earlier today. But it's very interesting because that has previously been expressive activity. They're really, what they're digging into is the difference between a public forum and a non-public forum, as far as treating the courtroom as a non-public forum, or possibly the entire courthouse as a non-public forum, which would basically, right now they're just doing it with a t-shirt, but this would allow, this has the potential to sort of snowball into a much larger First Amendment restricted kind of argument. So very interesting kind of thing developing here, possibly, if you want to look into that. There's a link for that as well. Eugene Volokh's conspiracy. Like I said, I believe he's out of UCLA. He is one of the individuals who actually was in the friend of the court brief for this, the next two links I'm going to be referring to. Actually, if you give me one moment here. I'll be right back. All right. Apologies. All right. So, thought I had this from the report somewhere handy, but I do not right now. Anyway, so this case, State v. Brewington, I've referred to this, here and there. It's a case out of Indiana that ended up, making its way to the Indiana Supreme Court. It involves this guy, Daniel Brewington. He has a blog where he ends up talking about, a judge and a psychologist that are involved in a court proceeding that he's going through, involving custody proceedings and things of this nature. And he's very critical of the judge and the psychologist. And what ends up happening is he ends up charged with intimidation and a few other things. And he basically ends up being this case where a lot of these questions rising around speech that is called threatening, but is not actually threatening anyone with a threat of physical harm. And it basically, this dude, Eugene Volokh, he ends up, writing part of this brief in support of First Amendment protected activity and things of this nature, as well as several other individuals. Long story short, they end up basically defining what intimidation is and what intimidation is not in this case, as far as Indiana goes. This is Brewington v. State of Indiana. It is number 15 SO1-1405- CR-309. It's an Indiana Supreme Court case. We're going to get into the intimidation stuff here in 1 second. This is a book written by Margaret Harkington. She's a professor at she's basically a professor of law at Indiana University here in Indiana. And her book sort of stems from the outcome of this case. The outcome of this case sort of opens the door to judicial critique, being First Amendment protected speech. And then her book ends up being about attorneys, even though they're officers of the court, not really having First Amendment protected activity, but they should have First Amendment protective activity in order to be able to best effectively represent their clients and their stories and things of this nature. As an advocate, there's there's a whole fucking book that written by a professor. I can't explain this nearly as well as she has. It's a great book. It's in the link. If you're interested in checking that out and reading into this further, it's $30 for the paperback. I think the hardcover is like $100. Anyway, so Indiana Code 3545-1 is the Indiana Code that concerns intimidation, threatening, however you want to term it. A person who communicates a threat to another person with the intent, number 2, that the other person be placed in fear of retaliation for a prior lawful act. The level 6, it is, however, the offense is a level 6 felony if the person to whom the threat is communicated is a person that owns a building or structure that is open to the public or is an employee of the person. Threat means an expression by words or action of an intention to 6. Expose the person threatened to hatred, contempt, disgrace, or ridicule. 7. Falsely harm the credit or business reputation of the person threatened. Now, what ends up happening is they sort of talk about how expose the person threatened to hatred, contempt, disgrace, or ridicule is more of a civil tort, potentially. It's this would be slander, something of this nature, and it's they're not trying to criminalize slander, so they basically they create this 2-pronged test kind of thing, and it results in such language as I'm about to read. The United States and the Indiana constitutions afford sweeping protections to speech about public officials or issues of public or general concern, even if the speech is intemperate or caustic. But there is no such protection for true threats, including veiled or implied threats, when the totality of the circumstances shows that they were intended to put the victims in fear for their safety. Fear for one's reputation is often the price of being a public figure or of involvement in public issues, but fear for one's safety is not. They use further language intended to place them in fear, not merely of being ridiculed, but fear for their homes and safety, the essence of an unprotected true threat. Furthermore, they say, but here, as further discussed below, constitutional protection for defendant's speech hinges on state of mind issues, particularly whether he intended his communications as threats and whether his victims were reasonable in perceiving them as threats. Deferential review of such questions creates an unacceptable risk of underprotecting speech. But our inquiry cannot end with the statutory definition, as Amici point out. For subpart C6 parallels the classic common law definition of defamation, and C7, which would be falsely harm the credit or business reputation of the person threatened. C6 would be expose the person threatened to hatred, contempt, disgrace, or ridicule. So it says, as the Amici point out, subpart C6 parallels the classic common law definition of defamation, and C7 reflects a particular type of defamation. A libel is said to be a malicious defamation expressed in printing or writing, tending to injure the reputation of another and thereby exposing such person to public hatred, contempt, or ridicule. Any publication that tends to degrade, disgrace, or injure the character of a person or bring him into contempt, hatred, or ridicule is as much a libel as though it contained charges of infamy or crime. subparts C, 6, and 7 then essentially criminalize defamation by including it in the definitions of a punishable threat. The same constitutional free speech protections that apply in civil defamation cases, therefore, must also apply to prosecutions under C6 and 7. The First Amendment aims to ensure that debate on public issues remains uninhibited, robust, and wide open. That's Milkovich v. Lorraine Journal Company, quoting New York Times, 376 U.S. at 270. This sort of robust political debate, encouraged by the First Amendment, is bound to produce the speech that is critical of those who held office. But one of the prerogatives of American citizenship is the right to criticize public men and measures. Hustler Magazine Incorporated v. Falwell, 485 U.S. 4651. Quoting Curtis Publishing Company v. Butts, 388 U.S. 130 and 164. Such criticism, inevitably, will not always be reasoned or moderate. Public figures, as well as public officials, will be subject to vehement, caustic, and sometimes unpleasantly sharp attacks. That's also Falwell. Hustler Magazine Incorporated v. Falwell. Even when those attacks are unfair, offensive, or ignorant, the First Amendment protects them so that legitimate debate will not be stifled. Foremost among those protections is the actual malice standard, sometimes called constitutional malice, to distinguish it from mere spitefulness, for speech about public officials. 50 years ago, the New York Times v. Sullivan held that a state may not punish a defamatory falsehood relating to a public official's official conduct unless the state proves that the statement was made with actual malice, that is, with knowledge that it was false or with reckless disregard of whether it was false or not. Such a privilege is required by the First and 14th Amendments. In turn, reckless disregard is not measured by whether a reasonably prudent man would have published or would have investigated before publishing, but rather requires that the defendant, in fact, entertained serious doubts as to the truth of his publication or had a high degree of awareness of their probable falsity. Garrison v. Louisiana, 379, U.S. 64 and 74. Even if the statements are made with ill will. But despite being defamatory, those statements may be protected by the actual malice standard as a matter of Indiana law, even though the doctor is not a public figure. We have extended the stringent New York Times standard to defamation cases involving matters of public or general concern, even if the victim is a private figure. That's upheld in Banditos, 712, NE2D at 449, 452. AFCO Heating and Air Conditioning Company versus News Publishings. Anyway, enforceability of the intimidation statute. Actual malice standard is so steep that prosecutions involving public figures or issues of public concern under Indiana Code Section 35, 45, 21, Section C6 or 7 are all but impossible. When a threat of ridicule or embarrassment is made against a public figure, New York Times applies as a matter of federal law, and if the speech implicates an issue of public concern, Banditos applies as a matter of Indiana law. In either event, proof of actual malice is required for a conviction to survive constitutional scrutiny. Only where a purely private figure is involved and the alleged threat involves no colorable issue of public concern may subparts C6 and 7 be applied as written, and otherwise the actual malice standard will preclude most prosecutions. As a result, the state will often be well advised to avoid bringing charges under those subparts or even including them in jury instructions for reasons discussed in Part 3. We'll get that in a minute. Let me check this. I see you guys are going at it in here. What's up there, John Davies? Yes, I got a beard now. Hi, Regina. Oh man, you guys got some shit going on here. I see, huh? So, by the way, there's a reason we're discussing intimidation tonight. If you've seen the video I posted yesterday, the simply stating that the public was supposed to have one free copy, public records law, I'm supposed to be able to come and get one free copy of the minutes. I'm told immediately, I'm not going to be intimidated by you anymore. I'm just asking for a copy of some city council meeting or Human Rights Commission meeting minutes. Nobody's threatening you, lady. You're going to call the cops and try to get me shot. I feel threatened. Hi there, Regina. Yeah, it's the intimidation thing is a very it's a way they try to entrap you. They recognize your free speech is threatening, but it's not a lawful threat or it's not an unlawful threat of physical harm towards the person, unless that's actually what you're saying, which is, a different thing. That's called a true threat, which we're going to discuss here next. True threats, as identified in context, are not protected speech. Not all forms of intimidation are limited by the actual malice standard. To the contrary, the First Amendment permits a state to ban a true threat. That is, a statement where the speaker means to communicate a serious expression of an intent to commit an act of unlawful violence, a particular individual or a group of individuals. Black, 538 U.S. at 359, citing Watts v. United States, 394 U.S. 705 and 708. The intent that matters is not whether the speaker really means to carry out the threat, but only whether he intends to place the victim in fear of bodily harm or death. For example, in Watts, the Supreme Court reversed the speaker's conviction for knowingly and willingly threatening the president, concluding his comments were only political hyperbole and not a true threat. Did you hear that? This motherfucker said he was going to kill the president, but it was considered political hyperbole, not a true threat. First Amendment protected speech. He said he was going to kill the president. First Amendment protected speech. Don't ever underestimate this shit just because they lie to you. As the Seventh Circuit has long recognized, written words or phrases take their character as threatening or harmless from the context in which they are used, measured by the common experience of the society in which they are published. United States v. Prochaska, Prochaska, 222 F. 2nd, 1 and 2, 7th Circuit, 1955. This circuit, the 7th Circuit, this circuit's test for a true threat is an objective one, namely, whether an ordinary, reasonable recipient who is familiar with the context of the communication would interpret it as a threat of injury. We therefore hold that true threats under Indiana law depend on two necessary elements: that the speaker intend his communications to put his targets in fear for their safety, and that the communications were likely to actually cause such fear in a reasonable person similarly situated to the target. Okay. Very important shit. Reasonable perception of threats under similar circumstances. Besides the speaker's intention to threaten, the other necessary element of a true threat is whether the communications at issue would be likely to cause a reasonable person similarly situated to the victims to fear for the safety of themselves or someone close to them. Making that determination from the perspective of an objectively reasonable person ensures that harsh but otherwise protected speech will not become punishable merely by being directed towards a hypersensitive or unreasonably fragile target. Yet particularly when the alleged threats are only implied, as here, the inquiry, as his blog, Mr. Brewington, as here, the inquiry must also account for what a reasonable person would perceive if similarly situated to the victim. Since the particular facts and circumstances known to each victim are the very facts from which threatening implications are generally drawn. So in effect, what is often called a reasonable listener test is best understood, at least in the context of implied threats, as a reasonable victim test, whether it was objectively reasonable for the victim to fear for their safety. Whether it was objectively reasonable for the victim to fear for their safety. Making that determination from the perspective of an objectively reasonable person ensures that harsh but otherwise protected speech will not become punishable merely by being directed towards a hypersensitive or unreasonably fragile target. Failed to distinguish between protected criminal defamation and unprotected true threats, even though that distinction is a matter of constitutional significance. So you see there's some very key language that they're using here to describe this test, and whether or not it's considered a true threat or a threat against your reputation, your fucking feelings, and it's basically what the Indiana Supreme Court has said right here. This would be a woman who I greatly fucking admire, Chief Justice Loretta H. Rush. And again, this is an Indiana Supreme Court case. It's number 15S01-1405-CR-309, Daniel Brewington versus the state of Indiana. And essentially, what Chief Justice of the Indiana Supreme Court, Loretta H. Rush, has said. Oh, yeah. Attorneys for, right here, Mr. Eugene Volek, who has the Volek conspiracy site. Anyway, what Chief Loretta H. Rush has said is fuck your feelings. Fuck your feelings. when a First Amendment auditor tells you that they're going to sue you, they're going to file a complaint, they're going to make you fucking YouTube famous, what the Indiana Supreme Court Chief Justice has said is fuck your feelings. Hypersensitive, fragile. I believe the Chief Justice called these motherfuckers some snowflakes or something to that effect. She said fuck your feelings. So that's where we're at with threatening a motherfucker in the state of Indiana. Is the Supreme Court's tired of dealing with public officials claiming that they were threatened on some fucking goofy fucking nonsense. So they addressed that situation and they cleared it right the fuck up. Clearly, it's an uncomfortable topic, as the professor states. Anyway, so moving along. So we're going to talk a little bit about this intimidation video. I feel intimidated. Oh, so intimidated. Intimidated and witty and bright. So I posted a video, I believe the day before yesterday, maybe. And I basically go in and I request to find out what is the process for a citizen of the city of LaPorte to file a complaint. You know, should one of my neighbors ask me, you know, how does somebody file a complaint, Chris? Well, I don't know anymore, because we used to have a human rights commission, and you know they were sort of responsible, according to the city ordinances, for walking an individual through this process. And well, essentially, everyone from the Human Rights Commission has resigned, and I made this happen essentially on an accident, and I understand this is a strong claim to claim that I made, you know, several, you know, Human Rights Commission members resign, but essentially I sort of put it in action on an accident somehow, so I'm told by the former secretary. But I'm essentially curious as to what the process is now. So I go here and I'm you know, if you watch the video, I asked this woman, you know, I'm curious what, you know, what the process is, and she kind of tries to bullshit me, and tell me, you know, well, they don't have quorum right now, and things of this nature. And what quorum means is everybody's fucking resigned, so we don't have any commission members, so we don't have any quorum, which means we don't have any meetings, which essentially leaves the process sort of incomplete now, which I, you know, my city has sort of, you know, taken these steps to make it, I guess, seemingly impossible for me to be able to file a complaint against them as far as with their own internal processes. So they've eliminated this as an option. And I'm just kind of, you know, thank you, new sub, Dracula 256. I'm just sort of, you know, curious as what about the other 21,999 people that live in my town? You know, I get that the city doesn't want to fucking deal with me, but these other people, they haven't done anything wrong. You know, what if one of them has a complaint? What the fuck do they do? So I asked out of curiosity, and as you know, there, one of my mods, if you guys don't mind, drop, if you don't mind dropping the link to this video. I forgot. I didn't really think about that part. Anyway, if you don't mind dropping the link in the video, thank you much. Mods are very helpful for these things right here. Be very appreciative of your mods if you got them. Anyway, so this woman pretty much bullshits me, and she gives me this form here, a complaint form, and I sort of, well, I was sort of confused because this is the first time I've ever seen this form. I've been given, several forms, and this is the first time I've ever actually seen this form. Now, I anticipated that I would be turned away and told, fill out a complaint form and fuck off. And I anticipated that it would actually be this form for the Human Rights Commission that the Human Resources Department that I was at and the woman who works in the Human Resources Department, and I anticipated she would give me this form, as this is the correct form for a general disability, veteran status, national origin, gender, sex, race, nature of alleged discrimination complaint form. It was created September 27th, 2016, amended November 10th, 2016. As you can see, that is the 801 Michigan Avenue City Hall address. This is for the Human Rights Commission that is all but non-existent in the city of LaPorte. There's also, there's a police department complaint form, which is obviously states at the bottom that Indiana Code 3544.22 makes false informing a B misdemeanor. Anyone who makes a complaint against a law enforcement officer to the state or municipality that employs the officer alleging the officer engaged in misconduct while performing the officer's duties and knowing the complaint to be false commits false informing, a Class B misdemeanor. However, the offense is a Class A misdemeanor if it substantially hinders any law enforcement process or it results in harm to an innocent person. This is fairly standard, as you can see. On the LaPorte County Sheriff's Department, they have the same thing on the bottom. It's your average deterrent on a law enforcement agency's complaint form for the citizen to make them sort of doubt their story. Do I want to risk, not remembering a very small detail and getting a false informing thing? However, it's that's not completely accurate. They do that as a deterrent, but you have a little bit more leeway when you're reporting as the victim of a crime. Anyway. So, as you can see, there's several different forms employed by the city of LaPorte. This is specifically an ADA complaint form for, I believe, the city engineering office. This would be a Margaret Dickerson is the ADA coordinator for the city of LaPorte. But as you can see, this woman had no clue what the process is. She ends up calling someone, spending a good bit of time on the phone. That's why there's a good bit of dead time where I'm sitting there sort of just waiting for her to figure out what the fuck she's supposed to do. And then she returns with this form that's universal. Has no idea who the ADA coordinator is, has no idea what the investigation process is, things of this nature. I continue to ask questions because the city ordinance doesn't mention any sort of process about the mayor handling any of this. They usually insinuate the mayor's a busy guy. What's up there, Maui? Happy Friday. Thank you for joining us. The mayor is responsible for appointing these members of the Human Rights Commission that have all resigned, which, as I said, we're going to get to that here in a moment. I made some very strong claims. I back my shit up as usual. Power of paper. But the mayor would not be responsible for handling the investigation aspect of this. And if the commission that's responsible for handling the investigation is all resigned, nobody's going to seem to be investigating, are they? So there's clearly something wrong with the complaint process here in the city of LaPorte. What exactly it is, who knows? They won't tell me. But let's talk about why there's something wrong with the complaint process. So, on January 4th at 4:20 p.m., and Elena Merzinski, who is a social work professor, I believe, at the Indiana University of Gary Extension. She used to be the secretary of the Human Rights Commission. She is also the wife of a Joe Merzinski, who's a local LaPorte High School. I believe he's a government teacher, but I definitely know he is a at-large city councilman locally. Anyway, she tells me at 4:20 p.m. on January 4th, I resigned. She is the former secretary of the Human Rights Commission. what we're going to discuss is why exactly it is that this woman who, if you go to Citizen X, you mind dropping that my first attempt to attend the Human Rights Commission? I believe it's September of 2016, maybe, where the first one where they don't have a quorum, and the secretary passes a post-it note and all that. Anyway, she's very involved in the process and in sort of orchestrating some sort of police alert in this attempt to attend this meeting, for this video that I'm trying to get them to post in the links, and sort of they kick me out of this meeting, and they claim that the individual who's hiding upstairs isn't there, so they don't have quorum, i.e., spoiler alert, that's the city attorney. Anyway, so a good bit of time later, as I said, January of 2018, this woman, the secretary, has changed her tune quite a bit. What she says on January 10th, 2018, oh, by the way, she says January 4th, 2018 at 4:20, I resigned. Her resignation letter says January 4th, 2018, 4:22 and 42 seconds p.m. Central Standard Time, from Elena C. Mrzinski. And I am writing to formally resign my position as a member of the Human Rights Commission. Given that it is no longer a functional entity, my service in name only does not seem appropriate. I am happy to contribute to in the future where it might be useful. I would like to strongly commend that the city continue its partnership with the Civility Counts initiative that the Boston Middle School is promoting in with a grant awarded by the commission. This component is absolute gold in making an impact, more programming in the schools. Anyway, she resigns. So what she says on January 10th, 2018 at 7:30 p.m. is creation of mass exodus, HRC Commission, taking a stand. We will not be held responsible for poor city decisions. Only 3 left. On January 10th of 2018 at 7:51 p.m. There is a stand being made. It will be heard. Today was the final tipping point for most. January 10th, 2018, 7:54 p.m. That I cannot go into. I am sorry. It was a meeting that did not include me. And in all fairness, that makes it hearsay. I trust my sources, though. Her husband's on city council. I have a very loyal tribe. January 10th, 2018, 8 o'clock on the dot p.m. You asked, I delivered. January 11th, 2018, 3:36 p.m. Without official confirmation, all members have resigned from HRC effective the end of this week. January 11th, 2018, 3:47 p.m. I ask her, when is it going to be official? She says, official? Question mark. Probably the next council meeting. The Human Rights Commission members were Christy Chatterton. She is the public affairs official at the library. Jessica Aguilar, who I believe is related to a local cop here, Victor Aguilar. The advisors are Nick Otis, the city attorney, and Jen Knoll, the human and community relations director. Resignations, however, are Nate Lux, Loucks, Paul Nesta, Jennifer Mount, Elena Mrzinski, Esther Stiles, and Nick Barknecht. Paul Nesta, January 10th, 2018, 6:56 and 28 seconds p.m. Central Standard Time. As I mentioned at today's meeting, I was out of town on January 2nd, never saw the write-up in the Herald Argus about the Human Rights Commission, or have a chance to read it this afternoon. To my surprise and great disappointment, I read, Krentz said he reached out to commission members to talk about how to move forward, but received little response. I recognize those were your feelings about the blah, 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 blah. He resigns. Jen Mount, January 10th, 2018 at 7:57:35 seconds p.m. To Mark Krentz, I am officially resigning from the Human Rights Commission as of today, January 10th, 2018. I have been a member since Blair Milo started up the commission, and after updating the existing human rights ordinance, I feel that we, as a commission, are legally unable to do the job as intended. We have not been allowed to educate ourselves and conduct the business the HRC board was intended to do on advice of the city attorney at the time, and I am tired of wasting my time. Family circumstances have changed, and I will no longer have the time to spend on this. I wish the new board luck. Sincerely, Jennifer Mount. Now, as of January 18th, 2018 at 5 o'clock p.m., the Human Rights Commission was canceled due to a lack of quorum, i.e. no commission members, multiple resignations. I believe the secretary called it a mass exodus. Human Rights Commission was taking a stand. They wouldn't be held responsible for the city's actions that were advised by the last city attorney. What'd she say? Hold on. I gotta check the notes here. Let me make sure I'm correct, because everybody's telling me there's no fucking possible way these people could have resigned because I forced their fucking hands. South by Southwest, 32 degrees. It's not a leap year. January 10th, 2018, 8 o'clock p.m. You asked, I delivered. Leave the HRC out of it. Seems like the secretary organized some sort of backdoor shit. Let me tell you why it's backdoor. Opinion of the Public Access Counselor 13-FC-324. While email discussion and deliberation are excluded from serial meetings as not being violative, final decisions are meant to be open and transparent. Pretty wild. I'm not full of shit, and the Human Rights Commission all resigned because they were lied to by the city attorney, and they don't want to be named in a potential lawsuit. So they chose the lesser evil and organized some sort of secret fucking revolt that the rest of the city administration buried. Ends up telling these people, you're no longer part of the commission, it's none of your concern, and things of this nature. If you notice in the video, the secretary who claims I'm intimidating her by calling them out on all this bullshit, she says that all these new meeting minutes, meetings that, I attended, there's videos of, but the meeting minutes aren't online, that they were all posted. But in fact, what they recently posted was the end of 2017 meeting minutes for the HRC, all of 2018, and up to almost the current 2019. And all these are like a dozen and a half cancellation notices, because they've not had a Human Rights Commission meeting since January, or actually prior to that, but they've not even had one scheduled since January, when all these people resigned. That's been about 13 months ago. Prior to that, I think they had canceled 3 or 4 months in a row prior to all these resignations. But essentially, in the city of LaPorte, there's no longer a Human Rights Commission. And this was created by ordinance, and it has a very good purpose. It was a good idea, like many things, but it was fucked up by human error. And as opposed to, acknowledging human error and taking that into account and trying to better the program, they've chosen to sort of just keep this thing a fucking secret. There is essentially no longer a Human Rights Commission. This woman tries to lie to me and just keeps saying, well, no quorum, no quorum, no quorum. And I sat there and I call her out on her bullshit. And what she does is she realizes she's been caught up in her bullshit. And she's been furthering other people's bullshit, knowing that it's bullshit, but doing it just the same for quite some time. So she does, in fact, feel intimidated. But what she's scared of is not her physical safety. She's scared of her reputation. She's scared of being seen as someone who participated in criminal activity. She's scared as being seen as someone who was tricked and manipulated into participating into a bunch of immoral things, various things of this. What she's scared of is people knowing what she's done and hurting her feelings, but not her physical safety. However, more than willing to believe her own delusional nonsense and essentially hit some sort of a panic button as soon as I walk in the fucking building sometimes. And the police just show up, and now I'm at risk. You know what I mean? It's very interesting how these things work. Because this woman clearly didn't have any idea, but she wanted me to not treat her like she was fucking stupid. And it's, I tried not to treat her like she was stupid. I just kept asking her questions, hoping that eventually I would get the right answer. I gave her benefit of the doubt multiple times. Me assuming you're not stupid, and I must just need to keep fucking asking you in, the same question in different ways, or asking you different things, to sort of, maybe help you fucking jog your memory to remember the correct information. Maybe you've forgotten. Woman clearly didn't even give me the right fucking form, but was so insistent that this was the process. But me knowing the correct information, knowing the city ordinances, knowing that this is not the correct process that she's telling me, and saying, hey, what you're telling me, I believe is wrong. I don't think that's the correct process. Here is the actual correct process. Turns into, you're intimidating me. You're asking a lot of questions. You're not believing the bullshit. So I'm just going to do what they told me to do, and you're intimidating me. But if you notice, when I break reality down to her and I say, lady, nobody's fucking intimidating you. This has been 3 years now. All I'm doing is asking for pieces of paper. I got a fucking desk and a computer and a filing cabinet and an ink pen and some notepads and a type away and a fucking file shit. I got an inbox and an outbox and shit coming in the mail and certification, and I'm just fucking like you. The only problem is I'm not trying to get you shot. I don't want to call somebody to come and maybe potentially shoot you. You're intimidating me. You see, she goes all stuck. She looks almost like she's catatonic. Holy shit. This makes fucking sense. The dude's right. It's pretty neat shit. Ooh, armed and dangerous. Writing your shit down. Asking for pieces of paper. Super dangerous. But yeah, exactly, Jenny. She had to stay on script. Problem is, what happens when you've repeated the same script, the same motherfucker for years? He knows what the script is. So he writes his own script, and he's prepared for yours. So he starts asking his questions. Bam. Oh shit, he's going off script. I'm not prepared to improvise. I'm intimidated. I'm intimidated. You're asking questions. I'm trying to answer you. You're not accepting the answers. I'm intimidated. Simple as that. This is the kind of shit they do to remove you from the process. You know what I mean? You see, they tried to make a fucking a hate crime for the property. I'm talking you could fuck up the front yard of somebody who's the cousin of a police officer. Hate crime. You know what I mean? They're coming up with these new things because the old shit isn't working. You know what I mean? People are figuring out, hey, this is not what they think it is, and it's been ruled on. You know what I mean? It's not intimidation, what I did. That's why it's so fucking funny. That that's the script that they go with. But it's clearly been ruled upon. It's not, I mean, fuck. 4 years later, a fucking somebody wrote a book off the idea. That's about as good a law as you can get. It's being upheld quite a bit and expanded upon every time somebody reads that fucking book. Every attorney who reads that book is gears are fucking turning. There's this intimidation argument is so clear cut as what's protected speech and what's not, that it's open an entire fucking other door. And this is the protection of First Amendment activity for an attorney, which is, they're officers of the court. This is a whole nother fucking ballgame. So, obviously this is an old tactic that's no longer working. They're coming up with new shit every day. You got to be conscious of these kinds of things when you interact with them. You got to be prepared to deal with this script. As you can see, this is what they know to do. They play that fear and aggression. It's not just police officers that are able to use the fear for my safety bullshit to cover their ass and essentially remove you from the transparency and accountability and petitioning your government for some sort of redress kind of activity. You know what I mean? They've got their scripts and they're coming up with new shit every fucking day. But it's pretty much enough of that. I was going to get into a few more other things. All right, so this is another thing I found. I haven't had too much time to read into it yet. There's a lot of shit that's I got to download. I don't really have the fucking space for it right now, but it's definitely progressing. I'm going to check these comments, see what you guys are doing in here real quick before we get into it. Yep, career killer, Maui. Camera does fucking wonders. Yeah, Cindy, very good point. She only became intimidated, after she looked fucking stupid and foolish with what she was trying to do. The shit, if you're intimidated, you would have been intimidated from the beginning. You would have been, through the fucking, as soon as I walked in the door, you would have been, oh no, he's here, and hit the panic button, lock the fucking doors down. Dracula 250 would like to talk to you one-on-one. Sir Throgmorton at gmail.com is my email. SIRTHROGMORTON at gmail.com. Hit me up. I'll get a hold of you there. Regina. Yeah. It's not gonna go off for like a half an hour. What is it? Should be the Baltimore Oriole. That's the wood ones are all the same. I got one that's like a green matte finish, and it's got a different setup. But the other ones are all like, coordinated. It's like, they're all the same when they go off, like at 9 belted kingfisher. There's like 3 of them that go off, so it sounds like there's a bunch of birds in each room. But then I got a green one that's in a different room by itself, and it's got a different setup. So, but I took the battery out of that one because it gets kind of confusing. I go by the different birds. So I know what time it is by the sound of the bird. Anyway, Goodwill. They're fucking at Goodwill. I see them all the time. Apparently, people donate these Audubon clocks to Goodwill quite a bit. Anyway, so moving along, we'll get into it. Manhattan Community Access Corporation versus Halleck, Halleck. There is a link in the description. And what this is talking about, basically, I'm going to read the language right from the link I posted. Whether the trial court erred in holding that a private entity's operating public access television stations are state actors for constitutional purposes where the state has no control over the private entity's board or operations. Now, essentially, what this is talking about is whether they are ultimately, this will affect the ability to censor YouTube and fuck your First Amendment. There's a lot of, the Cato Institute, various journalism and reporters and all kinds of just different fucking organizations involved in this, keeping an eye on it, that have submitted different briefs and shit in support and against and neutral and everything of this nature. But it's, something pretty important to keep track of. The outcome of this case could affect essentially your ability to have First Amendment, audits and be able to put them on YouTube. Long term, this could have a fucking major outcome on yes or no, whether or not you're doing First Amendment audits and putting them on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter or anything of this nature. It's pretty complex. It's an interesting thing to keep track of if you're in this community. It's ongoing, so I don't really want to fucking get too deep into it. You're better off reading it yourself. It's sort of a growing thing, and there's not really any outcome to speak of yet, but it's something to definitely keep an eye on. Last but not least, this I am very happy to sort of discuss tonight, because this is a beautiful thing. This has sort of been in the news the past few days. If you're involved in the First Amendment auditing community, you may have seen this. There is a little girl. She is 12 years old. She recently was in Patagonia, Arizona. Her name is, I believe, Hildy Lysiak, HildelYsiak. And she basically, dude, this is an amazing kid. Her dad's a journalist, so fucking mad respect. Each one teach one. This dude has done a great job. He's raised a future truth teller and an exposer and transparency advocate, First Amendment protector. This little girl is well on her way to being something very, very important in the First Amendment community. She basically has her own little news page called Orange Street News, and she runs it out of her house at her parents' house in Pennsylvania. And I mean, her Orange Street News site, she's got literally there's 400 to 500 entries. She's been doing this shit for a couple of years now, but I'm saying she reports on all kinds of shit. Just various different things in the community, seed saving exchanges, all kinds of shit. It's a beautiful thing. Anyway, she's in Patagonia, Arizona. This town marshal, Joseph Patterson, basically, there's a video in the link. He stops her and is basically giving her a bunch of shit for recording in public, and is telling her, because she's a kid and he thinks she's stupid, doesn't know what the fuck is going on. He's telling her that she can't record him. She can't put his face on the internet. That's against the law. And he says, and I quote, "I don't want to hear about any of that freedom of the press stuff. Further tells her that he's gonna, he's gonna be getting a hold of her parents, and threatens to take her to a juvie detention center and all these things. And at one point he says, something, you can't do that, and this little girl immediately fires back with, "Is that illegal?" And she knows her shit. Like I said, this is an amazing thing. This is the next generation, and it's, like I said, this little girl's like 12 years old. This is a full-grown man, exercising his authority as a police officer. Threatened her with, telling her parents, threatened her with juvenile detention. It's illegal. You know what I mean? He hit her with the full shebang that an adult authority figure could hit a 12-year-old girl with. And she stood her ground. You know what I mean? She wasn't intimidated at all. She knows her shit. Honestly, this Orange Street News, check it out, man. It's pretty fucking advanced for a kid. Like, to be honest, like, I was kind of embarrassed because I was like looking at it and I was like, Jesus Christ, this is a little bit better than something I could set up on the internet. It's just like, I'm telling you, like hundreds and hundreds of like different story entries all on one page. It's a pretty neat little setup. But it's just, different things that are going on in her community, that she is running around all on her own and basically getting the scoop on all these different things. Obviously she's not, out as a predominant cop watcher or anything, but I believe one of her original stories, or it could be her first story. Hold on one second. Let me plug this battery in here. One of her first stories, or it could have been her actual first story. She basically reported on like a murder in her neighborhood or some shit. And she's recently, she reported on some sort of drug dealing kind of thing and posted all kinds of stuff. And, she gets death threats. Like, she is a legit journalist. Like, the little girl's getting death threats. She gets hate mail. She has to, to deal with police threatening to take her to jail. Like, this is a legit journalist. This is a legitimate, essentially, she's done a lot for the First Amendment auditing community in this little interaction. Because this is not someone that they're able to victimize or demonize. I mean, this is a 12-year-old little girl that's well on her way to being an established journalist, and there's nothing that they can really bring up to try to tear apart her character and make her look like a lunatic or someone who's badgering the police. Like, the little girl is out riding her bike, and this Joseph Patterson town marshal dude rolls up and just hits her with typical bullshit, and she's smart enough to not be intimidated. So, like I said, to her parents, her dad's a journalist. You guys raised a hell of a kid. If you guys ever see this video, bravo. You raised her to know her shit. You raised her to stand on her ground. You raised her to do the right thing. She stuck to her guns and basically posted this video even though she was threatened to be retaliated against. You raised a hell of a kid. Anyway, so let me check all these. Yes, Cindy, we're definitely making a difference. And to be honest, that little girl made a hell of a difference because, like I said, this is going to be the kind of thing that it's going to be a lot harder for the establishment essentially to demonize her and make her look like she's some sort of provocateur or someone baiting the police or something of that. It shows how second nature it was essentially for this town marshal to just roll up and be like, you can't put my picture on the interwebs. I'm gonna take you to juvie. It sort of really highlights the the mainstream opinion of law enforcement that this behavior is illegal. This activity really highlights that they don't actually understand it. It's not that they seen anything suspicious. It's not that there was anything being done that was criminal. This is, this was a child out riding their bike. The focus was solely on one thing, recording in public, and the officer's perception that it was an illegal activity, that he could pursue some sort of action against this kid. And this is essentially, if you look at it as simple as it is, it's what we're talking about is that this officer doesn't know the First Amendment, and a 12-year-old does. This is, are you smarter than a fifth grader? No, Town Marshal Joseph Patterson, you're apparently not. Anyway, like I said, pretty neat little story. It's pretty cool, man. In my opinion, I want to say that this little girl was educated by her father, so she's obviously learned enough to be able to hold her ground, and I hope she continues. This is similar to the teenage girl in Israel, and the Palestinian, which I can't remember her name right now, Amir, or something Tamiri, maybe Amira Tamiri, something along, I forget what her name is right now. Anyway, as far as protesting and everything, like these kids are the future, and it's these kind of stories really highlight that what the difference is, and what it is that they're focusing on. The youthful innocence in these stories makes it a lot easier to see what exactly the issue was with the law enforcement officer. You know what I mean? There was no other thing to focus on, because you knew that it was just a kid out there riding their bike. It makes it a lot easier to understand what the issue is with something like this. This is a rarity, a gem kind of thing, but it happens. And it's awesome when it does happen, and it gets this positive press and positive attention to where people are able to see, the actual moral of the story here. Anyway, so let's do some Q&A or something for a couple minutes, guys. What's up there, Daryl O'Donnell? Thank you for the sub. Yep, Orange Street News. It's Hildy Lysiak, Hildelysiak. Pretty awesome thing, man. But like I said, mods, thank you guys very much. I'm going to have to go ahead and wrap this up, I think. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, thank you for showing up tonight. Thank you for your audience. I do enjoy doing these Friday night shows. I do enjoy sharing the good bit of information that I find. I enjoy learning and reading, and I enjoy sharing that information to anyone that's offering financial support through the PayPal. Thank you very much. I try not to ask anybody for anything, but I've got some loyal fans that help out on quite a regular basis. Every little bit helps. I do all this out of my own pocket. It does add up eventually. So appreciate it. Contributing to ink cartridges and copy paper and SD cards and things. But as you can see, we are making a difference here. The next generation is, they're not scared because they're informed. And I mean, no doubt in my brain that this little girl has to watch somebody's videos to know, what's going on with all this. Her dad's a journalist and everything, but I'm sure he's showed her somebody's YouTube videos because she's out walking around in her camera and she was very well prepared. So he primed her somehow, which means, somebody in this community, I'm assuming, this is an assumption, but I'm just assuming that her dad had her watch some auditor's videos and explain, this is a good way to handle it, this is a bad way to handle it, because she handled it very well. So it's somebody out there, some auditor maybe that all of us watch, likely one of the well-known ones, does a pretty good job, was likely some sort of source material for dad's training. And that's it's that easy. Somebody, whether they know it or not, helped this little girl learn how to do this, out in today's society and still be safe and be able to hold her ground and be informed and everything. So we're definitely making a difference. The next generation is being prepared to not be intimidated by law enforcement for recording in public, and there's proof. You might not hear about it every day, but it apparently happens. So as I said, your money towards this community is well spent. Shit happens that makes you see, shit in a different perspective, and it makes it all worth it. It's education's a beautiful thing, and that's where it all starts, is being informed, being educated, being confident that the information you have is correct because you've double checked it multiple times, you've read it yourself. Confidence in your ability to self-educate can take you places that are unimaginable. Can't even describe how far you can get with having the confidence in yourself to do something with what you've taught yourself, as opposed to let someone else tell you that just because you didn't, formally learn it or something of this nature, that's worthless. You know what I mean? All education is priceless. It's it's just the right time when that information is going to be priceless. I'm a collector of useless facts myself, but every once in a while they become the best thing to say at the right time. And then they go back to being useless facts again. But anyway, as always, this is always about learning, education, sharing information with each other, going out here and trying to better our communities and the world that we live in with what we're able to learn and teach each other. That being said, once again, thank you for showing up. Thank you for your audience. Thank you for the mods, the individuals that regularly show up, the loyal fans, and with that, good night, everyone. Like I said, Dracula, Sir Throgmorton, SirThrogmorton @gmail.com. Send me an email. Try to get back to you as soon as I can. What's up there, James? I don't know if I said hi. Good night. Thanks for showing up. Cindy, Civilian, good night. Everyone else, Daryl, Jenny, Maui, I don't know if you're still in here. Good night. Until next time, I'm working on something special with a friend. We're gonna get that uploaded here soon. But oh shit, I almost forgot. In the morning, some of you may know, I'm running for a local soil and water conservation district supervisory board. I'm trying to help keep track of things in my environment, as well as I'm trying to bring a fresh approach to this. I'm very much so not a row crop farmer out in the country. I'm very into urban agriculture and gardening in town, community gardens, rooftops, all this shit, garden or greenhouses. Um, like I said, anyway, tomorrow's the actual election. So wish me luck, guys. I could be an elected official myself, and I'll be held to the same constitutional standards that everybody else is. So maybe I can set some sort of an example. But this is a volunteer position. I don't get paid anything except for the joy of knowing that I potentially can make a difference. I might do a show on this. As a matter of fact, either way, win or lose tomorrow. I'm not even voting for myself, by the way. There's a young science teacher dude who's got like a farmer's market thing. I'm probably going to vote for him. I believe it's distasteful to vote for yourself. But anyway, I've put a little bit into this. I'm taking it very seriously. But win or lose to tomorrow morning, I believe next Friday I might do this show. I'm going to sort of lighten the mood a little bit. We're going to do it on some agricultural law and some things of this nature. Agritourism, liability for that. I've got some things like model ordinances for local cities and counties and things of this nature that sort of further encourage or make it a little bit easier for an individual to get involved with urban agriculture, as far as like not having to request variances for setbacks, and not treating a greenhouse like an accessory structure, which is what your garage is, things of this nature. But I've got a good bit of resources on this, as far as like from all over the country. So I think win or lose, next Friday we're going to do the show on some agricultural law, and then just model laws and model ordinances, and we'll even do some of my local building codes and ordinances. And we're going to talk about urban agriculture. You know what I mean? And yeah, I definitely live in the Corn Belt. We've got all kinds of shit going on. The hemp bill. Recently, my city enacted a $5.49 a month per citizen stormwater management fee. Like the number 2 reason to do any sort of urban agriculture, aside from all the health and environmental benefits, is stormwater management. It's a like a pretty much natural occurrence of urban agriculture is that you collect rainwater, you have less impervious surface. Rooftop gardens are good for removing impervious surfaces as well. But next week we're going to get into all this, sort of lighten the mood but stick to what we're normally doing. But we'll not everything has to be about a First Amendment audit or a wrongful arrest or something. Gardening and encouraging community gardens, and encouraging clean parks, and areas that have flooding to have less flooding. These things are important too to discuss on Friday Night Cites. So next Friday we're going to we'll have a little bit of a lighter show. We'll get into some fun stuff. It's some stuff that I really enjoy learning about. So you get to see a little bit of a different side of me, how I feel about some other stuff there. But like I said, next Friday. Thanks for everyone for watching, and you guys enjoy your weekend. I'll see you next time. I'll let you know how the election goes. Until then.